I always believed my life would be ordinary. Growing up in a small town nestled in the peaceful countryside, life seemed calm, predictable, and unremarkable. The town was not far from the bustle of nearby cities, but it felt worlds away. The familiar sounds of church bells echoing across the village marked each passing hour, each season, and every event in the lives of the townspeople. It was as though the rhythm of the bells was intertwined with the pulse of our lives, a constant reminder that life was steady, simple, and sacred. My father was a quiet man, with hands that told the story of a life spent working with wood. He worked in a small workshop, repairing antique furniture with the kind of dedication that comes from a deep understanding of beauty and history. His hands, rough from years of labor, were always gentle with the pieces he worked on, as though he were coaxing the very soul of the wood back to life. His heart was pure, always filled with kindness, and it showed in every action he took, every word he spoke. My mother, on the other hand, was the embodiment of warmth. She seemed to always have time for others, whether it was baking pies for the neighbors or softly reciting Bible verses before bed, her voice a soothing lullaby. I often found comfort in her words, especially in moments of uncertainty. From a young age, I sensed a calling within me, something that tugged at my heart, urging me to seek something greater than the life I knew. I recall the day I stood before the congregation for the first time. The church was filled with the familiar faces of our small community, their eyes fixed on me, and in that moment, I felt something stir deep within me. I was nervous, my voice trembling as I spoke, but I couldn't ignore the passion that burned inside me. My words may have been clumsy, but they came from a place of sincerity and a deep love for God. I could feel the weight of their gazes, encouraging me, urging me to continue on this spiritual journey. As the years passed, I found myself in a larger city, far from the quiet town where I had grown up. I was entrusted with a bigger community, and with that responsibility, my life took on new dimensions. I cherished the Sunday mornings, standing in the vast, ancient church, where hymns filled the air with a sense of timelessness, each note reverberating through the stone walls, uniting the congregation in a shared hope for a better world. It was in these moments that I truly felt the presence of something greater, a communion not just with each other, but with a higher power that united us all. But even in the midst of these sacred moments, something began to change within me. It was subtle at first, a strange feeling that I couldn't quite shake. I thought it was just exhaustion, perhaps from the weight of my responsibilities. But as time passed, the sensation grew stronger, more urgent. Every time I opened the Bible, certain passages seemed to vibrate in my hands, as though they were calling to me, begging to be heard. Words about repentance and the end times resonated with an intensity that was almost painful. It was as though the very essence of the scriptures was speaking directly to me. I began having vivid dreams, so real that they haunted me long after I awoke. One night, I saw a great city, its towering buildings crumbling to the ground as chaos erupted around me. The cries of those trapped beneath the rubble echoed in my ears, a symphony of despair that sent chills through my soul. Another time, I found myself standing in the midst of a crowd, all of us lost, searching for answers that never came. The weight of these dreams was heavy, like a burden I couldn't escape. My heart raced each time I woke, knowing that these visions were more than just dreams. They were messages impossible to ignore. Then came the Sunday that changed everything. As I prepared to deliver my sermon on repentance, a strange sense of premonition washed over me. I knew something extraordinary was about to happen. Standing before my congregation, looking out at the familiar faces of those I had served, I suddenly realized that the words I had prepared seemed insufficient. There was an urgency in my soul, a calling that could not be ignored. I shared my dreams with them, the unsettling visions that had been tormenting me, the certainty that something monumental was approaching. Some of the congregation understood immediately, their eyes filled with compassion and concern. Others seemed unsure, unsettled by the emotion that overwhelmed me. After the service, I retreated to my office, alone, and the weight of the moment pressed down on me. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my chest, and I collapsed to the floor, unable to breathe. My vision blurred, the room spinning around me, and then everything fell into a suffocating silence. And that was when everything began. If this testimony has touched your heart, I invite you to be part of our incredible community. Take a moment to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every subscriber is a precious member of our spiritual family. Also, I have a special surprise for you. In our next video, I will personally mention some of you by name. Imagine the joy of hearing your name spoken in front of thousands of people who follow our stories. This is your moment, your minute of recognition. I can't wait to read your comments and share this experience with you. As the sharp pain in my chest subsided, I felt something that can never be fully explained by words. It wasn't just a return of life into my body. No, this was something different, something eternal. As my breath came back in ragged gasps, a strange peace settled over me. The world around me, once frantic and filled with panic, seemed to slow, as though time itself was holding its breath. I had been unconscious for only a moment, yet everything had changed. The cold floor beneath me, the flickering candlelight, and the faint voices of those around me felt distant, as though I were no longer fully present in that space. And yet, the stillness was overwhelming. A silence that was not empty, but full of meaning. It was as though I had stepped into a place beyond this world, a realm where the noise of everyday life no longer mattered. Then came the light. It wasn't like any light I had ever seen before. It was soft, yet piercing, gentle, yet all-encompassing. It wasn't a light that illuminated the space around me, but one that seemed to fill every part of my being. The moment it touched me, my soul, my very essence, seemed to respond to it, as though it recognized on a deeper level than anything I had ever known. This light wasn't just external. It was within me, resonating with the core of who I was. In that moment, I realized I was not alone. A presence, vast and yet intimate, surrounded me. I could feel it enveloping me, a warmth that reached into the deepest parts of my soul. I could not describe it fully, for no human words could ever capture it, but I knew it was something beyond comprehension. A presence filled with pure love, goodness, and peace. A presence that had always been with me, even though I had never fully recognized it before. And then came the whisper. It was not a voice from the outside, but a voice from within me, deep, resonant, clear. It spoke my name, Daniel. The word itself reverberated through my entire being, and I knew instantly that this was no ordinary experience. It wasn't just the speaking of my name. It was a calling, a recognition, a truth. It was as though my soul had been awakened to something far greater than myself, something that transcended the boundaries of this world. As I stood there, bathed in the warmth of this presence, I felt myself drawn into it, as though it were gently guiding me toward something, a deeper understanding, a truth that had been hidden from me for so long, now ready to be revealed. The light around me grew brighter, but it didn't blind me. Instead, it comforted me, pulling me in as though it had been waiting for me all my life. The world around me began to shift. It was no longer the familiar space I had known, but something new, something beyond human comprehension. The air seemed to hum with life, with energy that was alive and pulsing. I found myself standing in a vast, expansive place, a realm that was neither light nor dark in the way we understand it. It was a space that felt alive with its own rhythm, a vast void that stretched out infinitely in all directions. And then the figure appeared. I knew who it was instantly. It wasn't just a figure I had read about in books or heard of in stories. It was him, the one who'd been spoken of in the scriptures, the one who was, who is, and who is to come. He stood before me, his presence radiating love and authority, and I knew that this was the very truth of my existence. The one who had always been with me, even when I had failed to see him. His eyes met mine, and in that instant, my entire life was laid bare before him. Every success, every failure, every moment of doubt, every ounce of faith. And yet, there was no shame, no condemnation, only an overwhelming sense of love and acceptance, a peace so deep, so profound, that it filled the empty spaces within me, leaving me whole in a way I had never felt before. His voice, when he spoke, vibrated through every fiber of my being. It was not just a sound, but a resonance, a message that reached into the very core of who I was. He said to me, "Daniel, there is so much I need to show you." And in that moment, I knew this was just the beginning. The words he spoke hung in the air, resonating deep within me. There is so much I need to show you. The weight of those words settled on my heart, an invitation to witness something beyond what I could ever imagine. The light around us intensified, but instead of blinding me, it enveloped me, invited me closer, as if it were calling me home. As I stood there, standing before this figure, I felt the vastness of everything around me, yet I also felt smaller than I had ever felt in my life. It was as if the very ground I stood on was an extension of the light itself, an eternal, living testament to the glory that surrounded me. It was beyond comprehension, beyond the limitations of time and space. I had no words, no thoughts, only a deep sense of peace and awe, and then the scene began to change. The space around me seemed to stretch, to bend, as though I was moving beyond the bounds of the world I knew. I saw it, an endless landscape unfolding before my eyes. Vast plains, shimmering like living crystal, bathed in a light that reflected the very soul of the universe. The colors, so vibrant, so alive, were unlike anything I had ever seen on Earth. They pulsed with energy, a divine rhythm that spoke to me in a language without words. In the distance, I saw mountains rise, majestic, towering peaks that reached into a sky unlike any I had ever known. The sky was filled with hues that defied earthly description, colors that sang with divine resonance, filling me with a sense of wonder and belonging. I felt as though I had stepped into a place beyond my understanding, yet my soul recognized as home. The silence around me was overwhelming, not a silence of emptiness, but one of completeness. Every particle in this realm seemed to be in perfect harmony, each one vibrating with an energy that was both peaceful and powerful. It was as if the entire universe was singing a song of worship, without sound, yet with a depth that could be felt in every fiber of my being. It was a peace that reached deep into the very essence of who I was. A peace that filled me, not only with tranquility, but with a sense of purpose, as if I had always belonged here. In that moment, I knew that what I had been seeking all my life, peace, understanding, truth, was here. This place, this light, it was all real, and I was part of it. And then he appeared again, the figure of Jesus, not just a distant image from scriptures, not just a historical figure. No, he was here, standing right beside me, his presence radiating an intensity that was impossible to describe. His form shone with a brilliance that I had never known, a radiance that seemed to pierce through every part of me. Yet it was not blinding. It was warmth, love, a deep, abiding peace that filled the space around us. He did not speak at first. His presence alone communicated everything I needed to know. There were no words necessary. His eyes, his gaze, they spoke directly to my soul. In that instant, I understood he had always been with me, even when I failed to see him. He was not just a figure from the past. He was alive, present, eternal. And then the vision unfolded before me, like a great screen opening across eternity. I saw the world, our world, before me. It was beautiful at first, filled with light, harmony, and love. But slowly, a darkness began to creep in, like a shadow growing larger, swallowing everything in its path. Cities fell into chaos. People wandered, lost, searching for answers that they could not find. Wars erupted. Pain spread. Faith was abandoned. I could feel their despair, their fear, their hopelessness. It was as if I could hear their cries in the very depths of my being. And then, as the darkness seemed to grow ever more consuming, I saw it. A small light, barely noticeable, yet glowed with intensity that could not be ignored. This light was different. It wasn't the ordinary light of the world. It was a light of people, men and women, kneeling in prayer, their hearts burning with an unshakable faith, their hands lifted in surrender to the divine. With every prayer, with every act of love, their light pushed back the darkness. Jesus turned to me, his voice filled with both love and sorrow as he spoke. "Do you see them, Daniel? These are the ones who still seek me with sincerity and humility. They are my faithful remnant." My heart was overwhelmed with emotion. Why were there so few of them? Why were so many blind to the truth? I looked at Jesus, searching for answers. With deep sadness in his voice, he said, "Many prefer the illusions of this world, but it is not too late. they can still return to me. At that moment, I understood this was why I'd been brought here, not just a witness, but to be sent back as a messenger. The vision began to shift again, and I was filled with a new sense of urgency. I knew I had a purpose. I had to go back. I had to warn them. I had to wake up those still asleep. I had felt the urgency grow inside me, a call that could not be ignored. The moment the vision began to fade, I was already aware that I would never be the same. The peaceful stillness of the otherworldly realm began to slip away, replaced by the familiarity of the physical world. It was as though the light that had once enveloped me was now receding into the distance, but its warmth still lingered within me, a fire that could not be extinguished. As my soul began its return to my earthly body, I felt a strange heaviness settle over me. The weight of my human existence, the flesh and bone that seemed so trivial before, now felt intense, almost suffocating. My mind swirled with thoughts that were both confusing and enlightening at the same time. How could something so profound be contained in something so fragile as my human form? Then I heard it, voices. At first, they were distant and faint, but they grew louder, stronger. I felt hands pressing against my body, trying desperately to revive the life that seemed to have left me. I became aware of the cold floor beneath me, the flickering candlelight in the corner of the room, and the whispered prayers that seemed to surround me, like a protective shield against the chaos of the world. But these things were not important, not in the way the vision had been. They were mere echoes of life I had almost left behind. With a sudden jolt, my heart slammed back into life. My breath rushed back into my lungs, as if the very air had been waiting for me to return. My eyes opened, and the blurry faces of my congregation slowly came into focus. Their expressions were a mixture of disbelief, relief, and awe, as if they had witnessed a miracle. Some were crying. Others were staring, still unsure whether what had just happened was real. But it was real. I could feel it in the depths of my soul, and I knew my mission had only just begun. The room around me seemed to shift as I struggled to sit up, my body weak, but my spirit stronger than it had ever been. I looked at the faces of the people around me, and I knew something had changed. The world, as I had once known it, was no longer enough. I had seen beyond it, glimpsed something eternal, and now I could not unsee it. My life, my purpose, had been redefined in the span of a few fleeting moments. I had been sent back. But why? The answer came to me in a rush, like a flood that could no longer be held back. I was a messenger. The visions I had witnessed, the divine presence that had guided me, they weren't for me alone. I had been chosen to share this truth, to wake those still asleep, and to help guide them back to the light. But the weight of the task was immense. My heart ached with the understanding that the world I had once known was on the brink of something monumental. The urgency that filled me earlier returned, more intense than ever. I needed to go. I needed to spread the message. I had to wake up those who had not yet heard the call. I left the church that day with a newfound determination. The streets that had once seemed so ordinary now felt alive with purpose. Every person I passed was a potential soul waiting to be reached, a heart waiting to hear the truth. But even as I moved through the world, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to come. Something even greater was waiting for me, something that would push me further, deeper into the unknown. And then, as if in answer to my silent prayers, the voice returned. Not the voice of the crowd, but the voice of the one who had guided me, the divine presence that had become a part of me. It spoke with clarity, with love, and with urgency. "Go," it said. "Tell them what you have seen. Tell them that the time is near. They must prepare." I knew that I could not ignore the call. The vision I had seen, the glimpse of the darkness and the light. It was not just a warning, but a message. It was a message that could not be kept hidden, a truth that had to be shared. The days that followed were filled with both fear and excitement. I began traveling, speaking to anyone who would listen, sharing the vision I had seen. Some people listened intently, their hearts moved by the truth I spoke. Others struggled to understand, their skepticism evident in their eyes. But I knew that every word, every encounter, was part of something larger than myself. I had become a vessel, and I had to carry this message, no matter the cost. And then, In a small gathering in a city I had never visited before, a woman approached me. Her eyes were filled with tears, her hands trembling as she took mine. She whispered to me, "I can feel it, the light. I am not alone anymore." Her words shook me to my core. In that moment, I understood this message, this truth, was changing lives. It wasn't just about me. It was about all of us, together. And as I looked into her eyes, I knew my mission was far from over. It had only just begun. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share these messages with more people. Also, don't forget to comment with your name and city below. In our next video, I'll be mentioning some of you by name, giving you a special shout out in front of thousands. This is your moment, your time to shine in our community. The days passed, and with each one, my purpose became clearer. It wasn't just the way to what I had seen that drove me. It was a profound knowledge that I was part of something much larger. The light that had illuminated my soul was not just for me to carry. It was meant to be shared, to spread across the world like a fire catching in the dry grass, igniting the hearts of those who were still in the darkness. I traveled from city to city, sharing my story with anyone willing to listen. Some welcomed my words with open arms, eager to hear the truth that had been revealed to me. Others were more skeptical, uncertain of the message I carried, questioning the reality of what I had experienced. But no matter how they reacted, I knew I had to keep going. The urgency was in my bones. The world was changing, and I had been sent to help guide it toward the light. In every city, I met people who had been lost, searching for meaning in a world that seemed to offer none. They were hungry for something real, something that could restore their faith in the future. And when I spoke, I could see it in their eyes. Something inside them was awakening. The words I spoke weren't just reaching their ears. They were reaching their hearts, stirring something deep within them that had long been dormant. One evening, after a gathering in a bustling city, an elderly woman approached me. Her eyes shimmered with emotion, and she grasped my hands tightly, as if afraid to let go. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Thanks to you, I now know I am not alone. I can feel the light. I want to be ready. I want to help others see it too." Her words struck me with a force that was both humbling and profound. This woman, this stranger, had heard the message I was sharing, and it had touched her in a way that was beyond words. In that moment, I realized that my journey wasn't just about me telling my story. It was about inspiring others to share their own light, to be a part of something greater than themselves. But despite the joy I felt in seeing lives change, there were challenges. Not everyone was receptive to my message. Some mocked me, dismissing the idea of divine revelations as foolishness. Others turned away, afraid of what the truth might mean for their lives. They were comfortable in their illusions, unwilling to confront the deeper truths that lay beyond their understanding. And yet, I did not falter. I could not afford to. The message I had been given was too important to let the doubters deter me. The truth was clear. Time was running out. The world was on the brink of something monumental, and every soul that could be awakened was one more soul saved from the coming darkness. I felt this urgency more keenly with each passing day, as I traveled from one place to the next. The stories of those whose lives had been touched by the message I carried filled me with hope, but also a deep sadness. So many others had yet to hear the call. The world seemed so divided, so lost in its own confusion, that it was hard to see how it could ever be healed. But I knew that I had to keep going. I had to keep spreading the message, no matter the cost. One afternoon, while reflecting near the shores of Quiet Lake, I felt his presence once more. It wasn't the grand vision I had experienced before, but his spirit surrounded me, filling me with a deep peace that seemed to wash away all my doubts. And then I heard his voice, soft yet firm, in the depths of my heart. "Daniel," he said, "never forget, one soul awakened can change the destiny of countless others. Every person who finds the truth becomes a light that guides the way for others. This is how the world will be saved." His words resonated within me, strengthening my resolve. This was not just about me. It was about each person who found the light and carried it forward. Together, We would form a chain of light, a movement of truth that would push back the darkness threatening to engulf the world. I knew my mission was not just to warn the world. It was to ignite a movement of faith, hope, and truth. I could not keep this message to myself. It had to spread from one soul to the next, like ripples on the surface of a pond, until the entire world was touched by its light. And so I continued. I spoke to crowds, small and large, sharing the vision I had been given. Some listened with open hearts, while others still struggled to believe. But I knew that the seed had been planted. Each person who heard the message, whether they accepted it immediately or not, was a part of this awakening. And that was enough. As I moved forward, I felt the weight of the responsibility grow heavier. The message was too important to be silenced, too urgent to be ignored. And yet, I felt a sense of peace in knowing that I was not alone in this journey. I was part of something much bigger than myself. The weeks passed, and my journey began to feel like a whirlwind. Each day a mixture of hope, doubt, and unrelenting purpose. I continued to share the message, traveling to cities and small towns alike, speaking to anyone who would listen. The encounters varied. Some were filled with tears and heartfelt questions, others with skepticism and disbelief. But the light continued to shine through one person at a time, each soul awakening to the truth in their own way. Yet, with each step I took, I could feel the weight of the task growing heavier. The urgency that had once sparked excitement now felt like a pressing burden. It was as if time itself was speeding up, and I knew deep in my soul that I had little time to reach as many as possible. The world was changing, and I could feel in the air, in the hearts of the people I met. There was a restlessness, a sense of something great looming just beyond our reach. The fear in some eyes spoke louder than words ever could. It was clear many were sensing the same shift, the same unrest. One afternoon, while reflecting on my mission near the edge of a peaceful forest, I found myself once again surrounded by his presence. It wasn't the blinding light from before, nor the overwhelming vision. This time, it was a subtle, all-encompassing warmth, a stillness that seemed to permeate every part of me. As I sat there in silence, his voice once again filled my heart, gentle but strong. "Daniel," he said softly, "you have awakened many, but there are still so many more who are asleep. The time is short, and they must hear. You must go further." The weight of his words settled deep within me, as though they had become part of the very fabric of my being. I knew that this was not just a request. It was a command. It was not enough to simply speak to those around me. My mission was bigger. I had to go to those who were unreachable, to the far corners of the world where the message had yet to be heard. A deep sense of peace mixed with urgency filled me. I understood that I was being asked to go beyond my comfort zone, to stretch beyond the limits I had placed on myself. This journey was not about me anymore. It was about something far greater than I could have ever imagined. I had been chosen not only to share the truth, but to inspire others to do the same. I knew that this was just the beginning. And so, I began to reach out in ways I had never considered before. I organized gatherings in larger cities, bringing together people from all walks of life. I spoke not only of the visions I had seen, but of the divine calling that had been placed upon my life. I spoke of the urgency that weighed heavily on my heart, of the darkness that was creeping across the world, and of the light that had been given to us to push it back. But as the crowds grew, so did the opposition. I encountered resistance, not just from those who mocked the idea of divine revelations, but from the very forces that sought to keep the truth hidden. There were whispers of doubt, of fear, and even threats. But none of it mattered. The message was too important, too urgent to be silenced. I stood firm, knowing that I had been called to do this, no matter the cost. One night, as I sat in a quiet room after a particularly intense gathering, I felt his presence again. This time, it was not as overwhelming, but it was just as powerful. I could feel the love, the hope, and the peace filling me once more, as though he was reminding me of the power of his grace. "Daniel," he said gently, "your journey is far from over. You have planted the seeds, but now you must help them grow. You will face trials, but your faith will carry you through. You are never alone in this." His words filled me with a renewed sense of purpose. I had been given the strength to face whatever lay ahead, but I knew that the true challenge was yet to come. The world would resist, The darkness would fight back, but the light would always prevail. This was my mission, my calling, and I would not turn away. The call to spread this message, to awaken as many souls as possible, had never been stronger. I knew now that this was not just about me. It was about the world, about the souls waiting to be awakened to the truth. And as I prepared to move forward, I knew that each step, each encounter, was part of a greater plan, one that was unfolding before me. If this testimony has moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything to us and helps spread this powerful message to others. Also, don't forget to comment with your name and city below. In the next video, I will personally mention some of you by name and give you a special shout out in front of thousands. This is your time, your moment to shine in our community. The days continue to blur together, each one filled with the weight of the message I carried. I had traveled far, speaking to countless souls, and yet, with every passing day, the sense of urgency only grew stronger. I knew that the time was drawing near. There was a final truth I had yet to share, a truth so powerful, so life-altering, that it had the potential to change everything. It was the key to everything I had witnessed, everything I had learned, and yet I hesitated. The weight of it pressed down on me, as if I were standing at the edge of a precipice, unsure of what lay ahead. How could I convey the magnitude of what I had seen? How could I explain the depth of the divine truth that had been revealed to me? It felt like something beyond words, beyond comprehension, but I knew that I had no choice. The message had to be shared, no matter the cost. One night, as I sat alone in my study, the familiar stillness of the room seemed to fill with something else, a presence, a peace. And then, as if an answer to my silent prayer, I felt a spirit surrounding me once more. The warmth, the love, the unshakable peace. It was all there, flowing through me, filling me to the brim. I could feel it in every fiber of my being, as if his presence was telling me it was time to share the final revelation. Daniel, his voice echoed softly in my heart. You have seen the truth. Now it is time to reveal it. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The words that followed came not from my mind, but from my soul. They were clear, undeniable, and full of purpose. The time had come for the world to hear the full truth. Look, Daniel, he said, his voice steady, full of love and determination. The time is upon us. The world is on the verge of a great change. The darkness that has consumed so much of it will soon be challenged by the light. But it is not enough to simply know the truth. You must share it. You must be the beacon that guides others through the coming storm. And in that moment, I understood the truth I had been shown wasn't just a message for me. It was for everyone. It was a call to action, a call to stand firm in the light, to be the light when the world needed it most. The darkness was real, but so was the light. And as long as we chose to carry it, we could withstand anything that came our way. The world was shifting. I could feel it in the very air. People were waking up, but there was still so much work to be done. There were so many who were still blind to the truth, so many who were still lost. But the message had been planted, and I had to keep spreading it. Each soul awakened was a victory, a triumph over the darkness that had sought to consume the world. And with each victory, the light grew brighter. I traveled once more, this time to places I had never imagined, meeting people from all walks of life. Everywhere I went, I shared the truth I had been given. I spoke of the urgency, the need to wake up before it was too late. I spoke of the light that could never be extinguished, and of the hope that would see us through the darkest times. And with every word, I saw lives begin to change. I saw people open their hearts, embrace the truth, and step into the light. It wasn't easy. There were still challenges, still those who rejected the message, still those who preferred to remain in the shadows. But I knew that with every soul reached, we were one step closer to the truth becoming known, to the world awakening to the light that had always been there, waiting to be seen. One evening, after a particularly moving gathering, a man approached me. His eyes were filled with tears, and he took my hands in his, holding them tightly. I can't explain it, he said, his voice shaky, but I can feel it now. I understand. I've been lost, but now I'm found. I can see the light. His words were a balm to my soul. In that moment, I realized the truth of what Jesus had said, that one soul awakened could change the destiny of countless others. His light, now burning bright within him, would guide others, just as mine had been guided. The cycle would continue, one soul at a time, until the world was no longer lost in the darkness. The journey had been long, and the road ahead was still uncertain. But I knew one thing for certain: the light would never fade. It would continue to spread, growing stronger with every soul it touched. The truth would be known, the world would awaken, and the darkness would be pushed back bit by bit. And as I prepared for the next step in this journey, I felt the presence of the divine one last time. His love, his peace, his guidance. It was all there, filling me with the strength to continue. If this message has moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us reach more souls and spread the light further. Also, don't forget to comment below with your name and city. In the next video, I'll be mentioning some of you by name, giving you a special shout out in front of thousands. This is your moment to be recognized and be part of something greater. Thank you for being with me on this journey. May you always walk in the light.